Uh-oh, that's a lot of orcs. I'm not sure we can handle this, guys.
Holy crap, we're screwed!
Not to worry, I got this.
Oh, that's a lot of mind flayers. I'm not sure we can handle this, guys.
Holy crap, we're screwed!
Not to worry, I got this.
Oh, that's a lot of Tarrasques. I'm not sure we can handle this, guys.
Holy crap, and yet again, we're screwed!
Not to worry, I got this.
Excuse me, Mr. Dungeon Master, sir, but this game is getting really boring, especially since the wizard here can defeat pretty much everything with one spell.
I smell a nerf coming.
Heck yeah, nerf the wizard! Nerf his butt!
You do know that's going to make things harder for us, right? Okay, fine. Wizard, from this day henceforth, you are Gary the intern. Wait, what? You can't do that. That's not fair.
Hello everyone, I don't really have any job experience as a wizard, but I learned new skills quickly, am a real team player, and I'm not afraid of putting in extra hours to make sure the job gets done. Stupid wizard.
That was quite the nerf.
Yeah, he should have cast Fireball instead.
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Luke Hart, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice you can implement at your game table. Today in the Lair, we'll be talking about 10 of the most powerful D&D spells in my experience, and how Dungeon Masters can deal with them. In fact, once we talk about the specific spells, I'm going to give you a handful of general suggestions that can be used for almost any powerful spell that comes up in your game and seems to be causing a problem. Because obviously, your experience with OP spells might vary from mine. But first, I'd like to thank all of my awesome patrons and YouTube channel members who help make this content possible. Not only do they help keep the lights on, but they also get cool perks such as access to a VIP Discord channel, voting on which videos I make, and exclusive monthly hangouts with me. This month, I'd like to shout out the following patrons and members: Stephanie A, Jared W, Beth N, Scoop, Float71, DM Silver, Scott F, Jonathan S, and Matthew B. There's a link below if you'd like to become a patron too. Oh, that was cheesy. Okay, enough of that, on to the spells. Number 1, Wall of Force. My friend Dan introduced me to this gem of a spell in 5th edition a few years ago via his wizard, Dexter Ambrose. My players were tracking down a former party member, Katso, who had betrayed them, and they finally had him cornered in the sewers. However, Katso was not alone. He had powerful friends, and this battle was shaping up to be a really nasty one even before Katso entered the fray. So, Dan had his wizard cast Wall of Force and seal Katso off in a sewer tunnel where he couldn't contribute at all to the combat. No saving throw, no nothing, just BAM! You're out of the fight. And that's the true power of this spell. First, there is no saving throw. Second, if you're trapped in it, you're basically out of the fight unless you can teleport out of it, and not all enemies can. Smart players are going to use this spell to lock down, say, half of a group of enemies, while their PCs clean up the other half. Then they're going to drop the Wall of Force and murderize the rest of them. Sure, it is a 5th level spell slot, so it should be powerful. But when your players use this against a boss encounter, for instance, it can turn your amazing fight into a big pushover. So, what does a Dungeon Master do when this spell becomes a player favorite? Well, besides doing something cheesy and giving Misty Step to all of your enemies. You can use waves of enemies, and you can disrupt the spellcaster's concentration. 2 tactics I'll discuss in detail a little later. Number 2, Leomund's Tiny Hut. I think I just heard the collective groan of all Dungeon Masters everywhere. Hands were thrown up in the air, hair was pulled out, and DMGs were burned in despair. I mean, what does a Dungeon Master do when their players can take a long rest whenever and wherever they want? Wilderness travel? Boom, hut. Nobody's attacking us while we sleep now. In the middle of a dungeon and need to get all your crap back? Boom, hut. Now the players have all their hit points and spells back, and they're ready to rock and roll. And I really wish you all wouldn't have burned your DMGs right there, because the solution to this spell is really quite simple. Not easy perhaps, but simple. Yes, quite simple. Think about it. Your players just gave the enemies 8 hours to themselves rest, and also discover this magical hut sitting in the middle of their dungeon, get reinforcements, set an ambush, and any other plethora of things they could do. My Ancient Dragon Patreon group recently fought a powerful Githyanki spellcaster, Talakansky Endrovich, in his wealthy estate. After a trying battle where the players almost wiped at several points, Talakansky ended up teleporting away with Dimension Door. And since the manor still needed to be explored, they were looking for Talakansky's prized sword collection, and they were beat up beyond belief, they used Leoman's tiny hut and took a long rest. Right there in his manor. It was great. I mean, Talakansky, a powerful CR10 creature, was able to not only rest himself, but also call in some Githyanki warriors, friends of his you see, and set an ambush in the manor. And then my wonderful players were able to experience what it's like to work their way through a dungeon that has been restocked with enemies, and a big bad that is fully healed and ready to pound on them yet again. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna do that sort of thing ever again. I'm evil. It's true. Number 3, Hypnotic Pattern. Imagine the beauty of a 3rd level spell that can incapacitate an entire crowd of bad guys. Okay, sure, maybe 2 or 3 escape it, and allows the players to focus fire on one at a time, murdering them one by one, while all the others are just standing there and doing nothing, and get absolutely no saving throw whatsoever. Except for the first one. In my experience, the power of Hypnotic Pattern eclipses all others at this level, including the much beloved Fireball. So I decided to use it on my players, thinking 2 can play at this game. And do you know what they did? Do you know what my wonderful, awesome, beautiful, beloved players did? Of course you don't. I'm going to tell you right now. They gave me the answer. You see, 4 out of 5 players failed their saving throws, leaving only one of them able to act. And do you know what he did on his turn? He used his action to shake another player out of the hypnotic effect. And then that player on her turn used her action to shake another player out of the effect. And so on down the line until in one round, because of how the initiative order landed, only one player was still affected because he had happened to roll high on his initiative. But the point here is that my players used a chain of shaking their buddies out of the Hypnotic Pattern effect to basically get almost everyone back in the fight after one round. And this is exactly what enemies should do. As long as you're role-playing enemies that aren't complete idiots, they should recognize that if their friend is standing there swaying about, totally out of it, they should just knock some sense into him and shake him out of it. Enemies should use this same chain reaction to get their comrades back in the fight, and there you go, done and done. Now, I do suggest rolling individual monster initiative rolls in this case instead of doing it by group so that you can play it fair, because not all monsters will be able to get shaken out of it in one round. And if you do want to be particularly devious or just smart, you could use a wizard with magic missile to zap each of the hypnotized bad guys with one magic missile doing just a little bit of damage. That does knock them out of effect though. Number 4, animate objects and other summoning spells. Yeah, we'll just lump all summoning type spells into here at this point, because you see, summoning spells like animate objects, conjure fae, and summon demons are not only massively powerful, but they can bog down combat, making it agonizingly slow and boring for everyone except the person running all of the summons. And since many of the summoning spells last for 1 hour, this pain and suffering can go on for quite some time. The big issue with these spells is the number of creatures or objects being summoned. High numbers of summons throws off action economy, which is huge in D&D, giving a massive advantage to the side with more actions. And of course, the more summons there are, the more the game, especially combat, is bogged down. In fact, I know many fine dungeon masters who limit the number of summons a player can have to 2 and ask them to choose the higher CR creatures instead. Is this a bit of a nerf? Yep, it sure is. But run a few games with 12 summoned flying snakes zipping around the battlefield, and you'll understand a little better why it's needed, and usually welcomed by most of your players. There are other tactics a dungeon master can use, of course, such as a area of effect spell that can easily wipe out large quantities of low CR creatures. Thunderwave, Shatter, Fireball. These will all make short work of your players' precious summons and bring some sanity back to the table. By the way, if you haven't already followed me over on Twitch, might I recommend you do so at the link below. I have live streams every Monday and Wednesday and Friday, so swing on by, hang out, and ask me your D&D questions. Number 5, Polymorph. There it was, my beautiful, homebrewed, custom, monstrous ink keg. A huge ink keg that towered over the characters, had multiple attacks, and even different stages they would enter into over the course of the combat. But no boss monster is good enough on its own, of course, so I included lots of minions to support my ink egg. My players were tasked with guarding a keep against this onslaught of ink eggs, followed by what was supposed to be a grueling encounter with this behemoth ink egg boss monster. It was gonna be great. I could taste the coming bloodshed. I could hear my players howling in agony, asking me to relent. It was going to be a DM's dream come true. And the wizard ruined it all with polymorph. Boom! T-Rex, and not just once but twice, massive sack of hit points with crazy damage output. Yeah, defending that keep turned out to be a pushover for my players. And my precious ink egg, well, yeah, it sucked. It's just horrible. I still wake up with nightmares at times about that. Let's just not talk about that. Next scene. I am sure that I'm not alone in my frustrations with this spell. I am confident that other dungeon masters have similarly had their hopes and dreams for player tear and anguish shattered by this spell. But fear not, there is a solution. It's called a ceiling. You see, my dear downtrodden dungeon masters, when the ceiling is only 10 feet high and the player's beloved T-Rex is squeezed and takes disadvantage on attack rolls and attacks against it have advantage, you can once again rejoice and take comfort in your player's tears and anguish. That's it, that's all there is to it. 4 walls and a ceiling, and preferably a floor. Number 6, Arcane Eye. Let's travel back a few years to my Hand of Light group and my friend Dan's wizard, Dexter Ambrose. You see, I had designed this really cool dungeon that was basically a crashed meteorite filled with mind flayers and their thralls. It was actually pretty cool. However, I had made one small oversight that was my downfall. I didn't put any doors in the dungeon, like almost none at all. So Dan had his wizard cast Arcane Eye, an invisible eye that he can see through for 1 hour, and proceeded to have it scout out the entire dungeon. At least before I simply had to put an end to it and had some mind flayers sense it and cast Dispel Magic on it. Now, why, you might ask, is that a problem? It's a problem for 3 reasons. First, when players know everything that awaits them in a dungeon, they can prepare for each and every encounter using optimum tactics. Second, players are able to perfectly choose the best route through a dungeon, bypassing encounters, and bead their way directly to their objective. And third, doing all of this robs your entire dungeon of one of the 3 pillars of D&D. Exploration. Players who love exploring dungeons and finding cool things as they go, like my player Joe in my Curse of Strahd game, are robbed of this experience in the first 15 minutes of a game when the wizard casts Arcane Eye, and then that player has nothing to look forward to in that entire dungeon. In fact, one could argue that much of the game experience has been ruined for many of the players at the table, except of course the optimizer type of player. And the solution to this spell is of course to not be a moron like me and simply put doors in your dungeons. Yep, next point. Number 7, banishment. All right, let's be honest here. This spell can really suck. Not only does it take one of your bad guys, often the most powerful one because that's what smart players will target, completely out of combat, but at higher levels, it can be upcast, affecting more than just one monster. And when cast against extraplanar creatures, something players will encounter more and more of as they level up and progress through the game, it sends them back to their home plane and makes them stay there, provided the caster maintains concentration for 1 full minute, which usually isn't a problem. This humble spell has allowed my players to overcome what should have been challenging encounters time and time again in my games, at little cost to them. Like it was crazy easy after using this spell. And I'll be honest with you, I really don't have a good solution for you. The best I can suggest is having any remaining bad guys focus fire on the caster, trying to disrupt his concentration. However, we all know that in 5th edition, disrupting concentration is extremely difficult and often not even worth trying. Though if you had all the bad guys attempting it, the wizard has to fail their constitution saving throw eventually, right? And for anyone who's like, that's not fair to have everybody focus fire on the wizard, let me ask you a little question. What would your players do if a bad guy banished a couple of them? We all know they'd focus fire on the enemy caster, and you better be honest enough to admit it, because we all know they would. They so would. So why is it such a big deal if the dungeon master has his enemies do the exact same thing the players would have done? It really shouldn't be a big deal. Number 8, Heat Metal. Okay, this spell probably doesn't make any other Dungeon Master's OP game-breaking spell list, but I think we've all pretty much understood for some time now that I'm just a little bit special, so just give me this one. It's not at all the damage aspect of this spell that is the issue. It's the disadvantage on attack rolls that it forces on the victim. With no saving throw allowed, like at all, when Heat Metal is cast on armor, of course. And we have known for quite some time that disadvantage on attack rolls is absolutely horrible in 5th edition. Like, horrible. So, this spell, with no saving throw allowed, have I mentioned that part yet? Can absolutely disable a big bad wearing metal armor. Like, boom! You can no longer hit anybody with your attack rolls. My solution is a house rule for this spell. On the enemy's turn, they are allowed a Constitution saving throw, and if they succeed, they do not have disadvantage on their attack rolls and ability checks for that turn. And every turn they take damage from the spell, they get to make the saving throw again to see if they have disadvantage or not. Is this a bit of a nerf to the spell? Yeah, it sure is. But have I mentioned yet how unfair it is to have a spell able to inflict somebody with a powerful effect with no saving throw allowed? Number 9, Silence. I'm guessing some of you probably want to cast that spell on me right about now. Just click that little button down there to go to a different video. It's gonna be okay. At some point in a Dungeon Master's career, they will realize how incredibly boring combats are when all the enemies are just big fat sacks of hit points that do damage. Not only is it unimaginative, but it can be quite boring for the players. So, the experienced Dungeon Master decides to spice things up with creatures that have special magical abilities and can even cast spells. The simple fact is that spellcaster enemies make combats much more interesting, dynamic, and fun for players. But then along comes the spell Silence, throwing us back into the Stone Age. You see, while Silence, the vast majority of spells simply cannot be cast because they require verbal components. Since Silence is a stationary spell once cast, the obvious solution is to have the wizard move out of the radius of the spell. And to be perfectly honest here, any spellcaster who is not a complete idiot is going to know immediately when they have been caught in the area of a silence spell. I mean, the whole entire world goes silent around them. No ambient noise, no birds chirping, nothing. It's just silent. It's very obvious. So a caster is going to get their butt out of there. Of course, if they're cornered in a room and can't go anywhere, yeah, they're pretty much screwed. Which is why I suggest stocking your spellcasters with a few spells that do not have verbal components, such as Hypnotic Pattern. See point 3 above for that beaut of a spell. And I would especially do this once your players start throwing around Silence like it's candy. Do people throw candy around? Is that even a thing? I don't know, but it sounds like a good thing. It's almost like throwing pizza around. Oh geez, here we go again. Number 10! Okay, I sort of lied to you. I don't actually have a number 10 for you. I do apologize, and I do recognize that my lying is sort of becoming a pattern, and I do apologize for that. However, I feel I must mention that as a Dungeon Master, it's sort of my job to lie, cheat, and deceive on a regular basis, so I don't really feel like I can be blamed here. So hey, why don't we do this? You all tell me what number 10 is. What powerful spell did I fail to mention? What an underhanded way to prompt comments. I love it. Oh, and another confession here too. You know how at the beginning I told you I was going to give you general suggestions for handling any overpowered spell that comes up at your game? Well, this video got really long on me really fast, like I'm looking at my timestamps down here. So yeah, I'm not gonna be doing that today either. Instead, I will save that for a future video. People are gonna be mad at me about this. Like, give us our suggestions. Don't forget to follow me over on Twitch for some chill live streams where we hang out, talk D&D, and even paint minis together. Please have mercy on me down in the comments, I beg of you. Next week, I'll be discussing how to handle the aftermath of a TPK. But until then, click right here to learn about how to deal with 10 overpowered D&D magic items. And until next time, I'll try to stop lying so much.